ASMR Gaming News. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to a special ASMR Movie Geek review. So, I just came back from watching John Wick 3, and I can't wait to share my thoughts about the movie. If you haven't watched the movie yet, don't worry, there will be no spoilers until the spoiler section, so I'm gonna give a warning before the spoilers, so you can watch this early part of the video with no problems. So, I'm chewing two delicious pieces of cherry bubblegum. And yeah, let's talk about the movie experience. I have some nice John Wick gameplay for all of you here, so you can enjoy spectating here with me while I'm talking. So, I went to the movie theater. I went to an early, showing of the movie because I wanted to get there before everybody, goes to the movie later today. I like to go to the movies when there's less people. So I got, a nice bucket of popcorn. It was actually kind of stale. It made me a little bit sad. But it was okay. It was okay popcorn. Got myself a drink, and yeah, the movie started. There was number of people in the theater, a few people. Let's just say they felt that they needed to check their Instagram multiple times during the movie, so this bright screen came out of nowhere in the theater a few times. Kind of annoyed me. I don't know, I'll never understand, you gotta check your Instagram every 3 minutes while you're watching a movie, especially if it's John Wick. But yeah, that was one thing that kind of annoyed me. A few people were doing that during the movie, but here we go. Okay, first impressions. Oh my goodness, this movie was amazing. I really, really liked it. But I don't think I like it as much as John Wick 3. So, if any of you remember, I did a review for John Wick 3 here on the channel back when that came out. And I was super happy. I was singing the praises of that movie after watching it. And to this day, John Wick 3 is still my favorite John Wick movie. But I'm still feeling really good with John Wick 4, so what can I say? This movie really tries to bring back all the elements from the John Wick movies. So if you like John Wick 1, if you like John Wick 2, and if you like John Wick 3, John Wick 4 takes little parts of each of those movies and are like, oh hey, remember this? Oh hey, did you like that part? Or here's a part 2 of that. So it sprinkled in a bunch of fan favorite, scenes or things and made them better or called back to things. So this definitely felt like a movie for the John Wick fans. So I feel like you have to watch the other John Wick movies before you watch this one. Let me say that again. You cannot watch John Wick 4 without watching the previous movies. Technically, if you watched, let's say, John Wick 2 or John Wick 3 without watching the first John Wick, you could actually be okay, because the movie kind of explains the previous stuff, at least a little bit. This movie, though, completely expects you to have watched the other movies, so you will be lost if you did not watch the previous ones. Okay, let's start talking. What do we start with? The music. Ooh, I would say that John Wick 3 and John Wick 4 really ramp it up with the perfect, intense music soundtracks that just go great with all the fight scenes. Think of games like Hotline Miami, stuff like that, where there's a lot of fighting going on, and they have this really cool kind of soundtrack in the background during the fight scenes. It just makes everything much better. It enhances the experience. So this music in this movie, amazing. I don't know who was in charge of the sound selection for the fight scenes and everything, but whoever was in charge did a great job. Some fights actually felt like the punches and things were going to the beats of the music. So you'll have like music going like dun 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 like that, and then you'll see like the fighting, the kicking going along to the music. So that's perfect. I love that. So sound of the music, amazing, and the sound effects in the actual movie. I'm talking like gunshots, punches, kicks, knife throws, clanging of swords, things like that. Amazing. It felt realistic. Like, when you're playing like a cheap video game and like every single gun sounds exactly the same and it's like the same sound effect and you're kind of like, okay. But then when you watch movies like this and it's like, wow, every gun, if you listen in this movie, every gun sounds like a little bit different. The pistols sound different. Everything is like, oh wait, is that this? Oh, okay. And you kind of like appreciate the sounds. I don't know how to describe it. It's just like an experience. Let's talk about the camera angles and stuff. Okay, so this isn't really a spoiler, but this movie has some beautiful like camera work, some camera angles. There is one specific scene in this movie that I want to give like huge shout outs to the director, director of like photography, everybody that worked on this. There's this scene where basically the movie becomes almost like a video game because it gives us a top-down view. Like, think of, the old Pokemon games, like Pokemon Diamond and Silver, stuff like that, Or think of games like Hotline Miami, where you basically are above and you see the character below going into different rooms and things like that, and you see it from above. There is a scene in this movie that goes on for a while where it's just like John Wick moving around. We see him from above, going into rooms, destruction, everything. It is beautiful. My mind was completely blown during this scene, and it was done so well. They must have taken ages to choreograph everything, because everything was taken in one shot. Like, John Wick goes in one room, beats everybody up, gets out of that room, goes into another one, gets everybody in that one, and then all the while there's like explosions, sparks flying everywhere, knives, blood, everything. It is crazy. It felt like somebody played Hotline Miami or Hotline Miami 2 and was like, hey, let's try to do a John Wick movie version of this to put in the theater, and that's what they did. It is insane, and I loved it, and that is not really a spoiler. And there's some really nice camera angles, especially towards like the end fights of this movie. Very interesting, like camera placements and angles and things. There's one involving like stairs where they really play with the stair angles, make it like extremely vertical, so you actually feel the verticality of like the scene. I'm not gonna go super in depth into this. I'm sure some of you out there that love movies or maybe went to film school can appreciate this, but I really liked what they did with this movie. So, fight scenes, the choreography, I'm sure Keanu Reeves and everybody, all the stunt people on this movie are basically like professionals by now. But oh my goodness, this movie has some beautiful fight choreography, both with like swords and guns and just fist fights and things. It is amazing to watch. And there's no like shaky camera, kind of like, in the Jason Bourne movies, if any of you ever watched the Bourne Identity or stuff like that. Those movies just like shake the camera during the action scenes. You can't really see anything. In John Wick, including this one, you get to like witness the full fight from different angles. Everything looks so good. So yeah, all these fights felt beautifully choreographed. There were like moments where I was just like in awe of the movie I was like watching, and there are like just small little differences or things going on. Like, there's a fight scene where John Wick's fighting a bunch of different guys and he's using his gun, And then he's like grappling with a guy, grabbing him and punching him and stuff. And he grabs like a small like a knife, like dagger from this guy. And it's like a brief, like half a second scene. Like you just have to see it during the fight. And then another guy comes at John Wick, and as he's coming over, John Wick just throws this knife that he had and then continues shooting people. It's like a tiny little second scene that you could easily miss. But it's there, and it was choreographed. Like, they put that in, like, oh, put your arm back, grab this guy's knife, put it behind you, and then turn around and quickly throw it at this guy. And they threw little things like that in throughout the movie that you just have to watch it multiple times, probably, to appreciate everything. So, I love that. Let's see. The acting in this movie was great. Keanu Reeves, you know, you can't really say anything. John Wick, he continues playing John Wick perfectly, I would say. I feel like he comes through a lot in this movie. This movie kind of expands on him as a person and the lore of the world a lot more. So, really liked everything involving him, as well as a lot of other, returning characters. We have Winston from previous John Wick movies in this one, the concierge guy, lots and lots of other people are made return. Lawrence Fishburne's character is in this as well as the king, I think, what his official name. And then there's a bunch of new actors, newcomers to the John Wick world in this movie. We have Donnie Yen playing a character that was an old friend of John Wick called Kane. And he is an insanely good, like, martial artist / swordsman. He is amazing. And he is super cool because he is absolutely blind, but he can still fight like he sees, basically. He's almost like a Daredevil, if any of you have ever watched Daredevil. Basically, he uses like the vibrations or things going on in the fight to tell where people are, and he'll be like trying to fight in that direction. It's awesome to witness. If you watch Donnie Yen in other movies, you know who it is. He's great, fantastic actor. He easily one of the best, I would say, other characters in this movie, along with Keanu Reeves playing John Wick. His character, Kane, really brought a lot to this movie. We have a bunch of other new actors in this. Bill Skarsgård, I think is how you say his name. Apologies if anyone here is from Sweden. Bill, his last name is Swedish, so I kind of mispronounce it a little bit, but you probably know this actor from the It movie, the Stephen King It movie that came out a couple of years ago. He played the clown in that movie, so he plays like the main villain character of John Wick 4, and he does a fantastic job. Love him as a villain in this movie. Let's see what else. There's a brand new character, assassin in this movie called Mr. Nobody. Yeah, he calls himself Mr. Nobody. He has a dog companion. Super cool. I like seeing the return of dogs in John Wick, so that made me very happy. And yeah, there's just a bunch of other returning characters from previous films and new characters that they introduce. Let's see, what else can I say? Ooh, the length of this movie. So this is something that I wasn't a huge fan of. This movie is very, very, very long. So this is the longest John Wick movie ever. John Wick 1 was like an hour and a half, so pretty easy movie to watch. John Wick 2 was like a 2-hour movie. John Wick 3 was like 2 hours and 12 minutes or something, so it was just like 12 minutes longer than John Wick 2. And John Wick 3 is almost John Wick 4 is almost 3 hours long. Oh my goodness. So, I loved the movie, but it felt just a little bit too long. Just a little bit. Like, I was like, wow, this was a long movie. And apparently, the director came out yesterday or something in an interview, and he said something like, oh, the original version of the movie was going to be like 4 hours or something. I have to go look for the interview. It said something like I don't know, 3 hours and 50 minutes or something like that. So I can't believe there's a version of this movie that's even longer than the version I watched. I wonder what happened in that movie. But it was a little bit long. I feel like they were trying to do a lot, and the pacing is a little bit off in this movie. That's one thing. Because in John Wick 3, the action was perfect because I felt like once it started, it kept going. In this movie, the action starts, and then it goes, and then there's like all these like little segments in that kind of deflate the action because there's like more exposition, more talking with the characters, and then they'll throw more action and more, and then another scene like that. So it just feels like there's like a middle part of this movie that kind of drags on a little bit. And because of that, I have to say that I think I actually like the beginning part of this movie more than the ending half of the movie. Which is something very strange to say probably, but the first half of this movie I felt like was paced pretty well, and I liked everything. The second half of this movie was trying to do a lot of different things, and there were moments where I was kind of like, ooh, this is going on for a little bit. Where are they going with this? Oh, okay. And then once that's finished, it would go to something else. But overall, still an amazing movie. I give it a review score of like 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10 easy. Maybe, I know some people would probably watch this and maybe give it like a 7. But there's definitely people that would watch this movie and give it like a 9 out of 10. I would not give it a perfect score, because there are some things in this movie that I didn't really like. There's some things in John Wick 2 I didn't really like that they did, and this movie does some things too, and I feel like John Wick 3 is the better movie in the way it was paced, in the action scenes, and the fighting, the vibe of the movie, everything that was going on. Really enjoyed the third movie. So I would put John Wick 4 right underneath John Wick 3. If I were to do a ranking, it would probably be John Wick 3, John Wick 4, John Wick 1, and John Wick 2 at the bottom. It's my least favorite of the series. I did not like that one that much. But, great movie. Very violent, but not super violent, because a lot of scenes where they were, shooting or slicing people or things, the camera would cut away like a second after, someone got killed or something, so there would be quick cuts. It wouldn't stay on like the bodies or things like that. So I would say this movie is pretty tame for like an R-rated action movie, because there's other movies like that last Suicide Squad movie that I watched, which was just like insane with the violence. John Wick 4 actually keeps it kind of tame a little bit, so just thought I would mention that for some people out there that maybe don't like super violent movies. I know a lot of people think that like John Wick is like a Kill Bill type movie because they haven't seen it, but it really is not. It's not that kind of like super violent type film. I would say it's more of like a classic action movie that does have violent moments, but doesn't like dwell on it like some other films do, so I thought I would make that distinction. Highly recommend going to watch this one. If you watch the other John Wick movies, you have to see it. Really enjoyed it. Now let's go to the spoiler section. So, spoiler. So, oh my goodness. This movie is crazy. I would say I was not expecting the direction this movie was going, so this movie, I'm gonna go through some plot parts pretty fast, but it starts basically where the last movie ended. John Wick, he gets, brought back by the king. He's hiding around in the sewers, in the subway system. New York City, coming back, getting his energy back, all while he's training and fighting. And then he goes back into the desert to kill the Elder from John Wick 3, I believe. And he does that as kind of like a revenge thing to the High Table. John Wick is not happy with them because they kind of like betrayed him a little bit. So John Wick, once he does this, he decides he's gonna go to one of his friends, and he goes to Osaka, Japan, to a Continental, I believe, hotel, which is kind of like the Continental Hotel that's in New York. And in this hotel, his friend Koji is like the owner with his daughter there. Kira, I believe, is what her name was. And yeah, John Wick shows up. He kind of has like a hidden meeting with Koji, his friend there, and he's like, oh, they're looking for me, I have to hide here. And all while this is going on, meanwhile in New York, the high table sent kind of like their assassin, their head guy, over to the hotel there. They basically tell Winston, hey, we're very angry with you for like letting John Wick hide here before, kind of covering for him. So you're in trouble. We're gonna destroy this entire hotel. You got like 1 hour to leave and evacuate everybody. And they destroy the building once everybody gets out. Winston, with the concierge guy played by actor Lance Riddick, who passed away like a week ago. Rest in peace, that man was an amazing actor. Really sad seeing him in this movie. He goes to meet with the lead guy, the Marquis, that the high table sent. And this Marquis guy is played by the villain, Bill Skarsgård. I hope I'm saying his name right. He plays the main villain of this movie. Basically tells Winston that he messed up and that his building's destroyed and that he's like been stripped of his title and he won't be able to have a hotel anymore. And after saying all this, he kills his friend, the concierge, which is like super sad. I was not expecting that. So Winston is like devastated, and this guy basically hires this old friend of John Wick, an assassin called Kane, played by actor Donnie Yen, to go after John Wick. And he's like, do you know where he is? And this Kane guy's like, I have an idea, maybe. So we're back in Osaka, Japan. This Kane guy shows up at this hotel with a bunch of other assassins and people in like armored protective gear. And there's like a huge like fight at this hotel. And we discover that this Kane assassin that's sent after John Wick is doing this because the high table threatened him and his daughter's life if he doesn't do this. So he feels like he has to do this while John Wick's other friend at the hotel, Koji, he has like a sense of like honor in protecting John Wick. It seems like they have maybe a relationship or something in the past, like maybe John Wick saved his life, maybe they were good friends, and he just wants to repay that debt. So he's like, you can stay here, we'll protect you. So there's like this huge fight with like these guys with armor and swords and knives and nunchucks. John Wick fights with nunchucks. There's bows and arrows, there's katanas, everybody's fighting. And in the aftermath, it's basically just like John Wick, Koji, who's wounded, his daughter, who is wounded, and this Kane guy, played by actor Donnie Yen, going around with his sword. He has extreme skill for somebody that's blind. It's like he can see even better, almost. Like he's like those anime characters, you know, that are blind, but they're like the strongest fighter, you know? So he's like going around just fighting everybody, and he kills Koji, who's John Wick's other friend, and he's basically telling him that he has to do this. And his daughter sees this guy kill her father, and she's like super mad at this guy, so she's injured and she can't really fight him, so she goes away. She finds John Wick, who's escaping as well, and she basically tells John Wick, like, yo, you have to kill this guy, he killed my father, you must do this. And John Wick's like, yeah, okay. So this movie goes all over the world. Like, it starts in New York, we go out into like the desert. I don't know which desert, but we go to the desert. We go to Osaka, Japan. The movie goes to Berlin. We go to Paris. This movie is like all over, like different areas and traveling. It's amazing. Basically, the plot of the movie is the high table is angry with John Wick. They put this Marquis guy in charge who wants to change things, make a name for himself by basically taking John Wick in and killing him. So he's sending out assassins, he's putting up super high bounties, and nothing seems to work, and John Wick's just killing everybody they send his way. Meanwhile, John Wick is trying to find ways that he can kind of rejoin his family, his assassin crime group, I guess is what you call it. And he discovers that he can basically get his papers back and be brought back into the fold of assassins by getting revenge on somebody that killed someone from his former assassin family. And then by doing this, they'll allow him back in the group, and they'll give him his document and his branding tattoo or something like this. So there's like a whole series of events. John Wick goes and he's fighting all these other assassins, and we get appearances from Kane. We get appearances from this other assassin that's new called Mr. Nobody. And Mr. Nobody is just there for the money, it seems, but he also seems to be kind of a fan of John Wick. He kind of fights John Wick a few times, but he does not kill John, and every time he's always like calling this marquee guy like, hey, I want like $30 million to kill John Wick, okay, he's right here. And the guy's like, no. And he's like, okay, and he puts the phone down and doesn't kill John Wick. So it seems like he really wants money, but he also just enjoys kind of like the chaos and maybe being in the presence of John Wick and witnessing everything he does. There's a part later in the movie where this guy with his dog are kind of in a fight, and John Wick notices that someone's gonna shoot Mr. Nobody's dog, his attack dog, and John Wick, even though he's fighting this guy's owner, he like stops, shoots the guy that's gonna shoot the dog, and then his owner's like, oh, okay, I have like a debt to you. And then he leaves him go because he loves his dog. And I kind of like that scene because it's kind of like a throwback, to the John Wick 1 movie where he cares a lot about his dog. And you see that now in John Wick 4 where he's like, he cares about other people's dogs as well. And later in the movie, when John Wick's like super beat up and hurt, this guy's trying to kill him, and this guy comes back and repays his debt with John Wick for saving his dog by shooting this guy and allowing John Wick to get up on his feet, and eventually he kills this guy that was trying to kill John Wick. So it's a nice like full circle scene. I really like that. This scene has like car chases. This scene has like knife fights, sword fights, bow and arrow fights, armored like bullet piercing round fights. What am I missing? Oh, the movie has nunchuck fights. Like there's so much going on in these different scenes, and it's crazy what they do. There's like so much to talk about in this movie. It's very, very long. A lot of fight scenes, a lot of set pieces. I would say my favorite areas of the movie were this Continental Hotel in Osaka, Japan. There was like a lot of like LED lights, and the areas were amazing. So I really enjoyed the fights there. And there's this like disco nightclub in Berlin, I believe, which also has like a very nice like soundtrack and like background for the fights that take place in this area of the movie. And basically by the end of the movie, John Wick manages to get everything back, and the only way he'll be basically forgiven and the High Table will basically give him his freedom is he challenges the main villain of the movie to a duel, and the villain like agrees, but he's like super chill and scared about it. Like he is not. I mean, I didn't mean he's chill. He is not chill about it. Like he's very scared. You can tell because he knows John Wick means business. So he accepts the duel because he doesn't want to look like a coward. But he tells this Kane assassin like, hey, I'm not gonna be fighting in this duel. I nominate you to like fight for me. So this guy, the main villain, can't even fight his own fights. Like he's so chicken. So everybody kind of hates this guy in the movie. You can see other people from like the High Table and stuff talking to him, saying like, hey, you're being a little bit too arrogant. You think you're gonna do everything. You need to sit down. But no. So he puts out like a huge bounty the night before the duel so that assassins can go kill John Wick, so then he doesn't even have to do the duel with him. John Wick, of course, has like a super intense night surviving assassins and everything, and he gets to the fight finally, almost completely beaten up. Kane, this kind of like villain but also friend of John Wick throughout the movie, kind of helps him in the end to make it in time to the duel. But he also hurts John Wick's hand, his right hand, which is what he uses to shoot. Because he says, hey, I helped you get to the duel alive, so I kind of need, you to repay this debt. So he kind of like stabs John Wick quickly in the hand to kind of, give him a disadvantage so they're kind of even. So John Wick's like, okay, so the duel they agreed to is kind of like an old western cowboy movie duel. They meet at sunrise, they have their revolvers, they put like one bullet in the chamber and they have to walk like 30 steps. They both like shoot each other in the arm, then they take 10 steps forward and then they shoot each other again, and John Wick shoots the other guy in like the chest, I believe, and he gets shot in the upper like arm, shoulder area. And then they take 10 steps closer. And all the while, the main villain is like watching happily and everybody's watching and they know what's gonna happen. And then you hear the shot. And John Wick gets shot by the Kane guy directly in the stomach. And then John Wick kneels on the ground. And the villain gets up once he sees John Wick is shot and down, and he gets the final bullet. Because basically there's 3 rounds, and whoever is down after the 3rd round gets basically shot in the head. So this guy gets the 4th and final bullet because he's like, oh, John Wick's dead. I nominate myself to finish him off because he wants to look amazing for killing John Wick without doing any of the work. So he tells this Kane guy, like, you can leave. Your daughter is safe, your debt's repaid. And Kane's like, okay, and he leaves. And this guy goes over to John Wick. He puts the bullet in his revolver and he points it at John Wick. And then Winston, in the background, you hear him say, you fool, or you arrogant fool. He didn't even shoot. And then John Wick looks up with the revolver in his hand that he did not shoot, so he took a bullet to save a bullet. And he says something like, I forget what he said. I can't believe it. He says consequences. And boom, he shoots the guy directly in the head. And the guy's out, he's dead. And then everybody witnessed that, and the high table guy comes out and says, like, John Wick, your debt is repaid. The high table has no problems with you. You are free, reinstated, everything. And John Wick's like super weak, and you can see he's very wounded, but he's happy, and he kind of like walks off. And then you see Winston. They tell him, oh, you're gonna get your hotel back, your title back. Everything's good again. And this Kane guy, you're good. You can go back to your daughter. You don't have to kill John Wick for us. So everything ends good. Except John Wick is like mortally wounded, so he's bleeding out. The sunrise is coming up. There's like a church in the background. John Wick walks down like these steps, lays down on the steps, kind of like Ryan Gosling in the Blade Runner 2049 movie. If any of you have watched that movie, you know what scene I'm talking about. John Wick lays down and he looks at the sunset, and then the movie kind of cuts to black, fades out, and then when it comes back in, we see a tombstone. And John Wick earlier in the movie asked, like, when he goes, he wants his tombstone to say something like, he was a loving husband, something like that. So they show the king and Winston at his like funeral looking at his gravestone, and they basically like ask, like, do you think he's really dead? Did he go to heaven? Did he go to hell? And they just like look at each other and smile and go their separate ways. There's an after credit scene that shows the daughter of Koji that got killed at the beginning still mad at this Kane guy and going after him while he's going to meet his daughter. So maybe that's gonna be a sequel or a spin-off or something, I don't know. But yeah, this seems like it kind of is the final John Wick movie, or it kind of ends the movie a little bit. Now, I heard a while ago that they said they were making John Wick 5 and 6, and that those movies were already planned. So, I don't know, I was kind of curious by the end of the movie. I don't know what exactly they're gonna do, but there is one thing. I think John Wick personally is alive. They never show his body. They just show him laying on the steps, and a lot of people owe a lot to John Wick still, especially people that were around him then. So I almost guarantee you that John Wick is okay. They probably brought him into some hospital somewhere, and either Mr. Nobody, Winston, Kane, any of those people probably nursed him back to health, you know? And I like to think that John Wick at the end of this movie probably went into hiding again. Maybe he retired from being an assassin. He's happy that he's free, and maybe he's just gonna live his life until they need him again in the future. So I think he's living in hiding, kind of keeping low, making it seem that he died so no one goes looking for him. So great time with this movie. I hope you all enjoyed this review. Let me know what you all thought of the movie if you watched it as well. And yeah, those are my thoughts. So I'll see you all next time, and so long.